Welcome to the OtherWorldsGG Community Cast. This is episode number 10. I am Table for Two, and I'm joined today by Alien Pickle and Mellified. How you guys doing?
Is this going to be on the test?
I think we've already failed.
Yeah. No, I'm doing good. It's a Saturday. It's a long weekend for us recording today, so that's exciting. I stayed up way too late last night. I confess, so I'm a little out of it, I guess. But looking forward to chatting with you guys. We have some interesting news today.
News is definitely interesting. That is for sure. What have you guys been playing lately? Have you guys been playing anything good?
No. I've been bouncing around. I finished the Vampire the Masquerade: The Coteries of New York visual novel game recently, which was it was fun. There's 3 different factions you can play it as, and I didn't love it enough to go back and play it 2 more times.
Can you play as a cat girl, or is it not that kind of visual novel?
Not that kind of visual novel. No, okay. This is I think the team that is working on Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 at Paradox did these, or it's related somehow, I think. But it's okay. It was fun, but beyond that, it's just been kind of our community nights and playing a little. I started on Dragon Quest 11 S on the Xbox, the remade version, because I've never played it. So finally getting around to that one.
Yeah, have you tried flipping it to the 2D mode?
I haven't yet. I've been playing strictly in 3D, and it's weird because you can't do it whenever you want. You have to do it at a save point, which
that's strange. Yeah,
which is weird. Yeah, so I was kind of like, well, I don't know if I want to commit to running in 2D mode for between 2 save points necessarily, but I'll turn it on and run around a little bit maybe and see if I like it. But I'm enjoying the game.
I thought it was just like a hit a button, flip back and forth, but no.
Yeah, so did I. And then when I got in there, I found out otherwise. So,
speaking of community nights, though, this last community night we played a bit of Hypercharged Unbox, which was a lot of fun.
Let me just say, those Beyblade little things are jerks.
Yeah, and we didn't get a chance to get to like the really cool backyard map. That gets intense, man. There's like RC fighter jets that like dive bomb by. There's cargo planes of Green Army men that drop down on you. Well,
maybe you should explain the game a little bit, because that makes no sense to anybody listening.
Sure, yeah, no. Hypercharged Unbox essentially is a game in which you play an action figure. It's like Toy Story meets Toy Soldiers, and you are, which is funny because Toy Soldiers is like Toy Story meets Toy Soldiers. But anyway, you're essentially you play as an action figure, and you can customize your action figure, and you give them different weapons. You could be like a lizard man or an alien or some like She-Ra or whatever. It's really kind of cool. There's a lot of fun like customization stuff you can do with the action figures, but then you're given these missions where you're essentially protecting these nodes from waves of bad toys. So you got like these almost kind of like robot looking things. There's like evil action figures,
zombie creatures, or zombie
like zombie like action figures, blob like things. So like stuff like very similar and reminiscent of toys you had growing up, but like because of licensing, there obviously it's kind of like not Rock'em Sock'em Robots, not G.I. Joe,
yes.
Not He-Man. So that's kind of like the vibe that it is, but it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of little secret like hidden things, like names of things are different, but obviously it's like that's supposed to be Legos, but they call them buildos.
Yes,
say that very enunciatingly. Buildos. And so
that's Bildo with a B.
Right. Yeah. Yes. So, but anyway, It's a lot, and then it's a lot of fun. And like some of the maps get like really intense, where you just get like waves of like crazy stuff, like RC tanks or Green Army Man tanks, or like RC jets and helicopters, and it becomes challenging but a lot of fun. So that's what we played.
It's like Toy Story tower defense.
Yeah. There you go. That's a better way of doing it.
Well, and the cool thing is, being that it's a first or third person perspective, you feel like you're right in the action as one of these hero action figures, protecting your little bases on the map. And
yeah, and when you die, you respawn by jumping out of another blister pack.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so. Well, the thing that Mellify was talking about is there's a map where you're actually on an air hockey table in an arcade, and you're just being bombarded with waves of Beyblades after Beyblades, like cutting up your shins. It's
do not want.
Yeah,
that's a fun map once.
Right,
I avoid it.
Yeah, you're just like, let's not do that again. But anyway, so.
Yeah. I feel like the game actually has an over reliance on those Beyblade things. But
last night in particular, it seemed like there was a lot more going on with that than normal. I will admit that was a little interesting to see that.
Yeah, either they have put in some element that randomizes what enemies you get, or they did a rebalance pass, which is probably the more likely thing. But I would like it if there was actually a random element about what's going to show up.
I just assumed it was, so I didn't realize it was a fixed menu of enemies.
Not all maps are going to have like helicopters as an example. Like not all maps are going to have like the UFO thing of death come in and just like screw with you.
Or two at the same time because forget this game.
But there was helicopters in the toy store. Or not, in the back room
in the
toy
back
store.
aisle. Yeah, that was new.
Which has never been there before. So my jury's out. Maybe they randomized something. If they didn't, I hope they do.
Well, that seems like an option.
Playability.
Yeah, that would seem like an option that would be good to have. Is have a set sort of expected series of bad guys, but then have the option to randomize it.
Yeah. Now I had to bounce out before you guys were done because I had some stuff going on. But did you get to the backyard?
No, we did not.
We got to the attic. And I think that's as far as we got was to the attic. The attic got really brutal on us.
Just show him the knights.
Yeah, the knights in the play castle worshiping the battery. Yeah,
that was pretty great.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah, the backyard is even better than the attic, and it's tough to top.
Well, what I was talking about last night that was interesting is there's enough going on in these maps where it'd be really cool to see one giant like battlefield style map where it's like territory control throughout the house. You got the different, because we're obviously simulating the different rooms around the house because we didn't even get to the kitchen level. So there's like a kitchen level, there's the bathroom level, there's the bedroom, obviously there's the attic, there's the backyard. Just like kind of like combine all that together and do some big kind of like battlefield style territory. Like give me an RC tank to drive around. Like,
yeah. So what I want is not the Transformers and not Cobra versus not G.I. Joe and not He-Man.
There you go. Yeah,
well, exactly. Ubisoft published a series of games that were a little more static, a little bit smaller maps than this hyperboxed, but it was very similar. But they actually licensed the real toys, so you actually were playing as He-Man and G.I. Joe and stuff.
Yeah, and unfortunately, those are a bit rough to get running anymore because they didn't keep updating them. And I remember like Windows updates just broke the hell out of them.
Yeah, I played them on Xbox, and the first two are 360 games that are backwards compatible with the newer consoles. And they did the one where they really doubled down on the licensing was War Chest,
right? Which actually has He-Man and the G.I. Joe stuff in it.
And that one's on Xbox One. Yeah,
the thing that it's like, okay, it was cool. But the majority of the game was basically tower defense in a traditional way. Not that you're running around the map as one of the guys, but you're just like jumping from turret to turret and shooting waves.
Yeah.
for sure. And that's where I think God, I keep forgetting the name.
Hypercharged Unboxed.
Hypercharged Unboxed, I think, is better. Is you're more in the action, where in the Ubisoft one, whose name escapes me, you're sort of jumping between turrets and fixed defenses as opposed to being, sort of in the world as a character.
Yeah, I feel that what the world actually needs is a Battlefield 4 mod that adds Transformers and G.I. Joe in there, but you're still playing Battlefield 4 just as the toys, and I'd be good. And then while they're at it, they could also just make a Star Wars one, but action figures, right? Because why not? There has never actually been a Star Wars action figure game. They had the Lego stuff, but that doesn't count for me. But as an adult, I would love to have an excuse to go back and play with digital versions of my old toys.
Yeah. So the game that I was referring to for those who are curious is Toy Soldiers, and the last installment is War Chest, which, like I say, is out on the Xbox One, so it is still playable there at least.
Yeah. Speaking of Toy Soldiers, have you ever seen the movie Toy Soldiers? Because Hypercharged is kind of that way.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's what I was saying. It's like Toy Soldiers meets Toy Story.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
But I don't know how many people have actually seen that movie. That's all.
Go look it up. What do we got in the news there, Malphite?
Oh my gosh, we have a bunch of stuff, but probably the biggest story of the last couple weeks is CD Projekt Red announcing that they got hacked. They got hacked bad. Apparently, all their source code was stolen, all their internal documents, and the ransomware folks encrypted all of their stuff, and are threatening to release it publicly if they're not paid the ransom. This is a growing phenomenon, I guess, in the ransomware space. Is we're not just going to break in and encrypt all your stuff. We're going to break in, steal stuff, and then hold you, encrypt all your stuff as well, and then hold you hostage. If you don't pay up, we will release your dirty secrets. So
are they in a position where they cannot continue development on Cyberpunk?
No, they can. So all their backups were saved. So like they've been able to recover everything from backup. So they said that they were not going to pay the ransom, and whatever happens because they're not going to cave to this. But
and I heard their stock took another giant nosedive on the news of this.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's
pretty standard operating procedure at this point when that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah. Well, that was, I think, based on the assumption that once the source code is leaked for Witcher and Cyberpunk, we're going to see all sorts of free versions of it floating around, and so on and so forth. The interesting thing is, I think it might actually help the real game, because people are going to be excited about all this new mod content that's going to get created by the community, because they have access to the source. So we'll see.
Yeah. While not condoning the action, the result could be either rather interesting.
Yeah, well, it could actually work out well for CD Projekt Red, is what I'm thinking, because I mean, this stuff's still protected by copyright, so It's not like GOG can start, or well, GOG's a bad example because they're owned by CD Projekt Red. It's not like Steam can start selling Cyberpunk and not pay CD Projekt Red. That would be illegal. So, I think what it does is it opens up the mod community in a whole huge new way, where people could really get in and potentially do a community patch that moves things along a lot faster for Cyberpunk.
So what if they were unable legally to just give the source code out to people, so they had to hack themselves so that they could actually get the community involved in saving
that's an
their
interesting
asses?
Yeah, that's an interesting idea.
Could have been an inside job.
That, I suppose that's true. Well, and you always wonder, how do these people get in? There's certainly plenty of
No, I know how they got in. Did you see the response to the tweet? Was
No.
guy was like, "Oh yeah, I know how they did it," and he put the like hex grid up from Cyberpunk, and he was like, "See, they just did 5555 BD F2."
Oh man. All right. Well, Hunter, do you have our next story?
Yeah. So, in the realm of strange, Google Stadia.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So Google Stadia.
Our good friend Google Stadia. Yes.
Yeah.
Not dead yet.
Well, it's not it's not dead yet. No, but the thing is they have shut down their internal studios that they were working on. So Google Stadia was announced, right, as this new cloud-based console from Google, essentially. And they were going to get their own studios set up to start developing their own games. And they even hired an industry veteran, I think it was from Ubisoft, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. Jade.
Yeah, to come in and like head that up and do these things. Well, yeah, Google shuts that down, and it's funny, not funny, right? Like it's not funny that people have lost their jobs over this, but it's funny in that, like, I think a lot of people, especially people who are very into the gaming industry and scenes, kind of saw the writing on the wall with this.
I think anybody who knows Google, who's watched the company for the last, 20 years.
Don't put your investments in something until you let it like ride for a little while and see where it's going. And because it's kind of like, it's like, some of their stuff has been out for a long time and it's shown a lot of like good, and they're still writing with it and working on it and developing it. But Google's been known to just like at any point in time, they're just going to shut that down, and you're just like, hold on. And so they're doing the same thing with their internal studios. It's weird because they're going to keep working on the platform and trying to work with other developers to bring their games to that platform, but I feel like this is again just a step in the wrong direction of cloud gaming. And what I mean by that is like I would love to compare this for a second to Nvidia's streaming service. So Nvidia has their Geforce streaming service, which they will sell you games, yes. However, they have the bring your own games to the platform thing. So essentially with the GeForce Now is you access that service and then you're logging into your own Steam account. You're logging into your own whatever game here account is, and it's your game. So no matter so essentially it's kind of like you're bringing your games to the platform and using it to like you're streaming from their service to you. So that's nice because if maybe you do have good internet but a bad computer and you just want to like play a couple of games until you get a new computer again, you can still do that. You still have those games. Yeah, it just I don't know. I just think the mindset of the service is better from what Nvidia has done to what Google has done. As an example. I mean the same kind of thing with like how xCloud and Xbox Microsoft is doing stuff too. I mean, if you have Game Pass Ultimate, you don't necessarily need to buy the games, but if you do and you have a console, you can still download the games to that console and play them. So it's kind of like a twofold system of, Google I think they're, I don't know. And I mean, it's intriguing, right? Like the idea of being able to like go to YouTube, watch a streamer, and then click a button and start playing the same game that they're playing or play with them in some community. Like that's interesting. I just think this is the wrong way to do it.
I think Stadia suffered in part because they didn't have a clear narrative. Well, you can subscribe and you get some games, you can use it for free, you can buy games. Like it was trying to do too much. If they had picked one strategy and sort of made that the thing, I think it would have been easier for customers to understand. I also feel like the insistence on these games running on Linux under the covers really hurts them because, I mean, Christ, Valve, the biggest influencer in the PC gaming marketplace, tried to get the industry to move to Linux, and it failed spectacularly. So the hubris of Google coming in and trying to tell the game industry, no, really, you need to move to Linux to use our cool, streaming service is idiotic. frankly.
Well,
That's
like
just a non-starter.
Devs are going to service the market segment where their customers are, and you're not going to move all your customers to Linux. So it's just not going to happen. Stop trying to make it happen.
Well, but
it was good for Linux though, because Linux actually got like good driver support out of Nvidia and stuff at that point. Like
true,
Ubuntu made major strides in gaming, but it's still not good.
Yeah, there is an argument to say that you can game on Linux now because of the aspects of, say, Vulkan as an example, or say some of these other things that allow for it. And there's other technologies out there too that allow you to do gaming on Linux, but it's actually gaming on Windows through a virtual machine, and you're sharing hardware access to it. It's a mess. So yeah, it's still not a viable
something that anybody
solution.
wants to actually do.
Not a normal person is going to do this. Not someone who's just like, oh yeah, like I travel a lot and I like to play games, so I'm going to subscribe to Google. Like they're not. No.
Right. Yeah. But it's the thing with Valve though, with their Steam OS, was that they were going to sell those Steam boxes, which was basically a budget console that ran Linux.
Well, and, budget console, sorta. It was
a platform, right? They were saying to the PC makers, meet these specs, and we will certify that it's a Steam box, and you can use the branding with it. And the market said, well, we don't want to go big on this because we don't think it's going to be a huge success.
Yeah, so which is exactly Stadia, right? Like nobody really wanted to go in.
So it happened at first, though, right? Like you had a few manufacturers who tried it, and then Steam themselves came out with Valve themselves came out with a Steam Link. So instead of like actually having hardware that you play on, it was just like, well, let's use your existing hardware and just stream to this thing on the TV. And then they even refined that further, and we're just like, well, we're going to get rid of the Steam Link, and we're just going to do the Steam app. And so the Steam app now has replaced all of this altogether, to where the streaming service now Steam is its own streaming service too. Like, but you have to stream to yourself,
right? Which I feel is Nvidia kind of pioneered that, right, with the Shield tablets.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what's interesting about that though is then you move from that to like Nvidia also doing the remote play stuff. They did that stuff first before Steam did it, and now Steam has their remote play together feature, which they're actually pushing rather hard. And there's a lot of games now that I actually will launch and play, and it was like play together, and like it'll have a pop-up that says like, remote play together with this game. And I was like, oh shoot, didn't realize that was an option.
Well, Nvidia doesn't really, because Nvidia also has, it's like I can cloud stream games right to my tablet, because it's like if I wanted to buy, name some game, but I can't run it on my tablet, so I can just stream it in the cloud to my tablet, which is exactly what Stadia does. But they don't really talk about it, right? It's like if you bought their Nvidia Shield tablet, yeah, you're aware, but I don't know that anybody else is aware that they even have that service.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, the GeForce Now thing is only that, and that's a good point that you've made. The GeForce Now stuff is like really kind of in the ecosystem of Nvidia users. So if you're an Nvidia user, you probably are aware of it. But like, if you're a console user, you probably have no idea that it exists.
Well, and as an Nvidia card owner on a PC, I would have no reason to be interested because I'm already at my PC where the game would be. So.
But you're probably aware of it because of the GeForce Experience like application that they use.
Yeah, because they stick a front end ad about it.
Right, exactly.
Well, and that's where I think my concern with the state of streaming is the players who have gotten into this business are the ones who have data centers already. Google. Amazon started their streaming service Luna recently, which looks somewhat similar to Stadia, although it doesn't require Linux, and Microsoft, because they own data centers. And, Nvidia doesn't own data centers. So they're having to pay somebody else market rate to run this hardware. And one of the things that, I tend to focus on the technical, but one of the things that sucks about all of these streaming services is if I go on and I'm playing solitaire, it takes a lot of resources out of the pool almost as much as if I'm playing Control or Battlefield or something. So there's a huge disincentive to the game makers if they're doing an all-you-can-eat sort of approach to pricing to support anything but the big headline blockbuster games. And they better have a steady stream of them. Otherwise, they're building infrastructure and nobody's going to show up to use it unless they can reuse that infrastructure for something else, which is why the big cloud makers are the ones who are trying this, because the incremental cost to them is very small.
Well, yes. So yes and no. So like, I mean, yes and no to a lot of what you just said. Sorry, there was a lot there. So, I think no, that Google is being foolhardy in their attempt on this. I feel like they're trying to branch into a sector that they have no right being in my opinion. Whereas like you have someone who like Microsoft or someone like Nvidia who has their foot in the door in this space already. You know, Nvidia makes arguably the world's best graphics cards, right? They do a lot of cutting edge graphics card technology. Then you have
I've seen the numbers. It's not arguable. It is the best.
Right.
Like,
and then, but then you look at like Microsoft and what Microsoft is doing, what Phil Spencer and the Xbox team are doing with like their gaming scene, with all the gaming stuff. Plus you have Microsoft infrastructure with Azure. Like they know the cloud space, they know the gaming space, and they're doing it smartly where they're not just saying, hey, we're just going to like have this only in the cloud thing and it lives there and only lives there and you can only touch it there and that's it and you're done. Like they get it. Right, like
so it's like, can I take the Xbox app, much like the Steam app, put it on my phone, leave the house, and then fire up a game at home on my Xbox and have it stream out, or is it only in house that you can do it?
Yes and no. So like during the beta phases of a lot of things, you could. I think they've temporarily disabled it, but I think they're supposed to be bringing it back.
The intention that they've said publicly is that you will be able to stream for free from your home console to a mobile device or from the cloud if you have a subscription that offers that, which is Game Pass,
which is Ultimate. Right, yeah. I did it. Like I've done it. Like during the beta phase of all of this stuff before they went live with their full on xCloud, I actually was able to stream from home to work and play my home console at work.
Well, so I wanted to point something out that I think is significant. NVIDIA's entry into this space. First of all, like I said, I don't think they're going to be successful because the economics are not in their favor, not because they don't own data centers. But even putting that aside, what happened is as soon as they said, hey, we're going to let you play the games you already own on our platform, 3/4 of the game industry came in and went, no, you're not. If you do that, we're going to sue you. So take our games off. And so NVIDIA had to pull everything from Activision Blizzard. I think they had to pull all the Rockstar stuff, a couple of other major game developers.
Which is strange.
Pulled out.
So that's interesting that you bring that up. And there's plenty of other news to talk about, but this is interesting. This is really interesting because what I don't understand is it's essentially it's a micro virtual environment instance for you is what they've set up, where I could go and do the exact same thing that NVIDIA's done. As a matter of fact, there's a whole like tutorial on YouTube about it that I found where you could go to AWS, don't tell Amazon, but you can go to AWS, you can set up your own micro instance there, give it the graphics processing power that you need because you can do that. You can set up your own streaming service in the cloud through AWS privately and do the exact same thing that NVIDIA was basically doing on their own end.
Right.
What I don't understand though is why what was the legality issue? Like that's where I find like it interesting. Like
there wasn't one. There wasn't one. No.
So then
go ahead.
So then what were they trying to sue them for? For what?
Well, they were threatening them. They said, well, you are doing a paid service where you're doing a public and I disagree with that. But a public exhibition of our game, which means you need a commercial license, and
That's
you
not,
don't
I
have
don't
a
think that's
commercial
true,
license.
though. I
don't either, and neither did Nvidia, which is why they did it. But do they want to spend the next 10 years fighting the half the game industry in court, or do they say, okay, if you don't want it on there, we'll pull it? And what they chose to do, which I think is smart, because that's not a fight they're going to win, even if they win in court. You know what I mean? They're going to piss away so much money fighting it; it's not worth it.
Yeah.
But
so
I guess
which publishers objected to this?
Activision Blizzard.
All of Activision Blizzard.
Okay. Well, let me put it this way: the one game company that stood out and said, "No, we are going to support this," was Ubisoft.
Oh,
and it's interesting, and this is why I brought this up, because I want to fast forward a little bit. What Ubisoft later did is launched a all-you-can-eat, all of our games, all of our DLC in a subscription for $15 a month, and it's called Ubisoft Uplay Plus or something. I forget the name of it. The branding, Ubisoft's branding's terrible. But they did this.
You play a lot.
Yeah, that would be good. I think they've stepped back from the Uplay branding, but anyway, so it's $15 a month. You can play any Ubisoft game, including brand new releases. You can play all the DLC as part of this subscription. And what's cool about it is if you want, you can go to Stadia and play any of the games in your subscription. If you want, you can go to Amazon Luna and play any of the games in your Ubisoft subscription. No additional fees. So they have a business relationship with Stadia and Amazon where there's some money changing hands on the back end, I'm sure. But basically, if you want to play Ubisoft games and you don't want to buy a PC or you don't have a high-end PC, for $15 a month, you can play them with very little, cost to buy into that. So, that is really interesting. And I think Ubisoft gets it in a way that by allowing, the GeForce Now, by allowing or working with Stadia and Luna, they're seeing some potential here to open up their market to new gamers that.
Yeah, because this is the weird thing. Because the weird thing is you still had to buy the games from the developer. That's the thing that killed me. I was just like, what are you
with Stadia?
No. With the Nvidia thing. So
right.
If I because I had to bring my own games, right? So I'm bringing my own games to that platform in order to do it. So that means I have to have bought the games from those other platforms in order to use it. So it's kind of like, where's the problem here? You're still getting paid for these games. That's. And
that was basically, they thought they could get more money out of Nvidia. They felt like, well, if you're going to charge a subscription, you need to pay us some of
It's
that.
not even a subscription to their game; it's a subscription to their technology. And then, it's blah.
Yes,
blah,
I know, but this is greed, right? This is just, to me, it's blatant greed on the part of those game development companies to say, unless you're going to pay us, we're not okay with it.
That sounds like some Nintendo shit.
That's very much what it sounds like. Yes.
Well, I feel like we
never go full Nintendo.
Never go full Nintendo. That's good. I feel like we ended up doing our topic show right here almost, but we should probably move on to our next story.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something a little bit lighthearted. I like tabletop games. I know they're not for everybody. But they are doing a Monster Hunter World board game. And one of the big trends in board games right now these days is miniatures. And they came up with a mini for Monster Hunter. And the mini is a foot tall.
That's ridiculous.
So wrap your head around that one for a second.
I hope to God it's plastic and not made out of pewter, and Games Workshop is not involved in the pricing model, or that's $1,000 miniature.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's a little crazy. But I mean, basically, this is one of the top tiers for their Kickstarter. You can get a giant version of one of the minis, but it just seems so silly to me, the idea of playing a board game with a foot tall miniature.
Yeah, that's really nuts. That kind of reminds me, it's almost like playing with Did you guys ever see the collector's edition for the first Titanfall game? Came with like an 18-inch like statue, and you're just like, holy crap! Like, where am I gonna put that?
We at Blizzard, they did during the World of Warcraft days, they did a mannequin, like a full plaster mannequin, that was a Night Elf hunter, and she was minimally clothed, right, as the hunters were in the game,
or blood elves for that matter.
Well, yeah. There's there's apparently a shortage of clothing fabric in Azeroth, but we had an opportunity to do an employee purchase of these things, and I I had a standing policy where I would buy one of everything that all of those like employee purchases, because I missed out on a few early on and regretted it. And I was like, okay, this is the line. Like, I can't have a 5 foot tall night elf statue, or
That's
like
sitting
around
in my house with a bunch of kids.
Yeah, well, yeah. Like, what the hell do I do with it?
Yeah, see, that's where you screwed up. Because had it been me, I would have been like, give me all of them that you have, and put them in this storage unit, and we're gonna wait about 3 years, and then I'm going to open my Amazon store.
There we go.
Where I can then scalp these for 10 times what I paid.
Probably so. Well, and what was so
you
funny
put them
about
in your yard as like lawn ornaments, though. Just
there
you go. Like Christmas, like put little Santa hats on them.
Oh my god. Well, what's funny is, and I shouldn't tell this story, but I'm going to. We had one in the lobby of our building where the technical folks were, and as I mentioned, she's not terribly well endowed in the clothing department. So, although in other departments she was well endowed. So somebody came along and taped $1 bills to her clothes.
Oh my god.
On the statue in the lobby. And our director at the time came into work one day and was like, okay guys, that's super funny, but you can't do that. Like, we have to take that off. So they did take down her earnings for the night, but oh my god,
should have like photoshopped it into a Duke Nukem screenshot where it's like, shake it, baby.
Yeah, seriously. Well, so at any rate, I did get a kick out of that, but I was gonna say the one other miniature that I've heard of that's like crazy oversized like this was the Star Wars miniatures game, and they did the Executor. The Super Star Destroyer.
Right, yeah. That's probably huge.
Yeah, and it's like 4 feet. A 4 foot miniature or something.
Well,
ridiculous,
because I have the base game for the X-Wing miniatures game, and knowing the size of those models and how they try to do some things to scale, but not like completely. Just the very idea of them trying to do like the Executor like that, to me just sounds.
At that point, the Executor is your kitchen table.
Yes.
And
yeah. Well, yeah, because what else do you do with it? Like, you better have a garage, a basement, or a shed, because you're going to have a special structure to store your Star Wars miniatures.
Yeah, that would be a big table to have to play on. Because I mean, I'm just thinking of the scenario in which you have to fight that thing, which means you have to bring in a lot of other ships. So it's like that's a big play table.
Well, and I suspect it would be like a tournament thing or like an event type of thing, because just the amount of time to take all those turns. How many guns does the Executor have shooting at your X-Wings flying around? It'd take 20 minutes just to roll all the dice.
So in a like a big open business space, right? Like big open room, bunch of cubicles. But then you have to have some kind of sound dampening solution, because otherwise it would be a giant echo hell. So over at Escapist Magazine in Durham, whenever they existed, I went over there and I was hanging out, and their sound suppression solution on the ceiling was a giant foam Star Destroyer that was like end to end of the office space. It was like, I couldn't even guess what scale, but it was a Star Destroyer that was probably 50 feet long.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's
it was
cool.
It was, and you're under it, right? So they didn't have to do like the top. It was just like the belly of a Star Destroyer and the engines on the back of it and stuff, like just stuck to the ceiling. That's pretty dope.
That's pretty awesome. I just am thinking of like the docking bay on the bottom. You know, who gets to sit under that thing? Like, is that the premium spot in the office or the worst? I don't know.
Yeah, and then they have like a spotlight, like a tractor beam that's lifting the CEO up out of his chair. No.
Oh man, that's funny. Well, jumping back into the game news, one that's pretty exciting for fans of flight simulation, perhaps. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, the newest installment in that very long-running series, is out on PC. You can buy it, you can play it, you can love it. It's also in Game Pass, although it is the sort of basic version. There's extra content you don't get, but it is coming to PC. And so, sorry, to Xbox. Thank you. I just said it's on PC. It is coming to Xbox, and Microsoft is saying it will be virtually indistinguishable from PC, which this is, I have a web forum I'm on where people post screenshots from flying around in this game, and I swear to God, it's photorealistic. It's amazing how good it looks.
Yes and no. So Jim and I Jim and I played it, and we took a flight up to Cleveland, and sure enough, that looked like Cleveland. It was pretty realistic. And then we took a flight down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was like, that's not Charlotte. It was like,
yeah, it was like really selective about where their detail was.
Yeah, not all the cities were in there yet, but I mean, but when it's there, and it looks really good, and it's a lot of it is entertaining. So
yeah, well, I just think it's so neat that they're really bringing this parity between Xbox and PC, that we haven't really seen before. So I thought that was pretty exciting.
Well, it'd be interesting to see how virtually indistinguishable they say it is. So to be honest with you, I'm really curious though about this next bit of news here that Halo Master Chief Collection is actually getting a server browser, or at least they're calling it a server browser. I mean, like, so the three of us for sure come from the days of like legitimate server browsers, right? Like, we buy a game, there's somebody hosting a server somewhere out on the internet, you can connect to it. It's like, the 24/7 CTF Blood Gulch maps playing, or Shoddy Snipes, or stuff like that. Like those are the days of gaming that we come from, but have they still exist, but it's been greatly diminished and reduced to more matchmaking type games these days. But so 343 is actually going to be putting in some kind of a server browser, or like some kind of like a custom games browser that'll let you browse through them differently. Now, I don't know if that means that they're adding in the point where like I can rent out a Halo server that runs 24/7, or if it's like I can do much more customization matchmaking stuff that I play and I have more control over, but it's all done within the game. So I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how that's going to work, but we'll see.
Or it could even still be a peer-to-peer thing instead of being like dedicated servers. They just need to give you a list, like who has a game up right now that's running the mode that I want to play and how many people are in it. And then you choose which one to join, other than just accepting random ass matchmaking, right? Which I feel is a nice middle ground.
Right, because I don't think you can currently. I could be wrong, but I don't think you can currently hot join games in progress. Like if you were playing something, I don't think I can like just join.
Depends on the mode. Yeah, it depends on the mode.
But there's a bit of Halo news all around this though. So they're adding in a new map, which is interesting because the map that they're adding in came from the Halo Online game that they made. That was the Halo 3 port that was supposedly just for Russia. But that, of course, as we know, was hacked and made available for people around the world to play. But they're adding in a map from that specific version to the Halo MCC. Plus, they're adding in a few other like little minor things, some like field of view changes and some stuff like that.
Well, so. Did they not give you the Forge tools with the Halo Master Chief Collection? Because people should be making their own stuff at this point.
I think Forge exists, sort of.
It definitely is there, but I don't think. I mean,
I remember the first PC thing was Forge, right? They were just like, here's Forge, screw around with it, but there was no game.
Well, okay, so Halo 5, there was Halo 5 Forge that came out on Windows 10. So that was something that you could do.
Oh, okay.
Was that. But Halo on PC back in the day, like Halo 1 and 2, they definitely had like customization stuff, custom browsers, custom all that kind of thing. So browsers, I mean like custom servers. Wow. But yeah,
because at this point, all the games that are going to come out are out in the Master Chief Collection, right? Like it's what, Halo 1 through 5?
Halo 1 through 4. So I mean,
1 through 4.
1 through 4, ODST and Reach are all in the Master Chief Collection. So it's 6 games. Even though there is Halo 5, Halo 5 is still on the console only. I haven't heard any news of whether or not that's going to come to the PC. People are speculating that it eventually probably will, but it's also, I think, like the least liked of the.
I think that's an understatement
of the Halo games. Multiplayer is something different. I'm speaking particularly of just like the story itself was very left a lot to be desired. But yeah, I'm curious.
So if you didn't like 4, you haven't played 5.
Right. Yeah. And 4 was okay. I liked 4 all the way up until the end. It was kind of like Halo 4 was kind of like Mass Effect 3. It was really good all the way up until the end, and then the end was kind of BS. So for what it's worth,
I would call it efficient. Like you don't really have to fight the boss; you just kind of hit F to pay respects.
That's right. That's true. That's basically what you do. Yeah, because that's exactly what happened. For those of you who don't know, spoiler alert. But like when you get to the final boss in Halo 4, you pretty much shoot at him like a couple of times. Literally, like I pulled the trigger twice. Did a couple of burst fires and then ran up to him and it said press X to like finish.
Press X to win.
Right. I was like, oh, all right. And then I sat through like 5-10 minutes of cutscene and that was the game. So but anyway, so I'm a big fan of the other Halo stuff. I like all of the other Halo things. Halo 1 through 3, ODST, Reach. Those are all really great games, all really great content, and that's all in the Master Chief Collection. So, I mean, I can get 5 out of 6 enjoyment out of that, right? So, 5 out of the 6 games can be fairly enjoyable, so I'm okay with that. Plus, they're doing their seasons type stuff or their unlock stuff. So, like, you can do, the more you play, you can unlock different skins and stuff like that. They've added in some, like, really cool Warthog skins for Halo CE or Halo 1 that are basically skins from Jurassic Park, which are, like, really cool. So, you can ride around in your Warthog and it looks like a Jeep from Jurassic Park.
Well, kind of in a weird tangential relationship to the Halo games, there is a game getting a re-release on the PC, or I'm sorry, on the Xbox and Windows PCs, called Stubbs the Zombie in Rebel Without a Pulse. That is the official name of the game.
Yeah, it's got like 2 fans, right? And it was like both people that played it.
Hey, I really like this game.
Right, you're one.
I know. But here's the thing. It's an interesting kind of diversion for Halo fans because the one of the senior developers at Bungie left because he wanted to work on something different. But he was so familiar with the Halo engine, he convinced Bungie to license it to him for this game. So this game uses the Halo 1 engine, but it is a sort of 50s style town where you go in as this zombie and your job is to infect the entire town.
Is this the one where you can actually like detach his head and roll around town? Or is that a different zombie game?
No, that's a different zombie game, I believe.
All right.
So you're trying to take over the city of Punch Bowl, Pennsylvania, and Stubbs has an arsenal of zombie sputum, gut grenades, and stunning unholy flatulence, according to the developers. So this is coming out in March. Probably one of the more interesting things about this is when it was made in 2005, they convinced a bunch of sort of alt-rock bands to do covers of some of the 50s like classic pop and ballady type songs. And they actually released that soundtrack as a standalone album, and it was very successful. One of my favorite bands of all time is a group known as Cake. They did a cover on it, and there's a bunch of other names you might recognize. So even if the game doesn't appeal to you, the soundtrack might, because it's kind of a fun mashup of the not era, 2000s era with some of the 1950s stuff. So keep an eye out for that one. Hopefully it won't be too expensive. We haven't seen pricing yet.
I'm honestly, I'm just surprised that it got a project to remaster the damn thing.
Yeah, well, I think they've already done all this work on the Halo engine, so it may not be that heavy of a lift. I don't know.
Yeah. That's just kind of weird, right? Like I would think, hey, put your resources where the audience is, and I wouldn't think the audience is there. So, all right. But yeah, if they can just say, hey man, we already did the engine, all we got to do is just port a couple of like text files over and bang.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of my assumption. So we'll see.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's coming out on the Nintendo Switch, because like all old games come out for a second life on the Nintendo Switch.
It sure feels that way, but not in this case. But it's every other game, it seems like, is out on Switch. Hunter,
Microsoft should make a portable Xbox 360 that just only plays 360 titles, and then they can resell all of them.
Well, you showed us the Wii that somebody took the board and like chopped 3/4 of the board off to put it in a little Game Boy case.
Yeah, it was called the WTF cut. Is like the pattern that you cut the thing in, because it's like, wow, what? You just chopped off like, I don't know, a good 70% of the motherboard.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy to me that Nintendo built something so inefficiently that you could cut 70% off and still have a functional console.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what it is that they've cut off that they don't need to make this other thing work, but whatever.
Well, it was like port connectors and the Wi-Fi thing, and it was like ancillary stuff. But yeah, but it is shocking. Like the Wii is actually like about a 2-inch long piece of board with 2 chips on it.
Pour one out for the poor Wii U, the unloved bastard child of the industry. All right. Hunter, you want to take us on to our next story?
Yeah, so we were talking about some hardware earlier with the Nvidia stuff. Here's some more hardware things. So I guess leaked Core i7 11700 results show, AMD Ryzen is still the CPU to beat in 2021. Which honestly, I've kind of stayed clear of Intel chips for a while on my personal builds at home. I do see the benefit of like Intel's chips and stuff like that, but I went to a Ryzen 7 2700X or whatever about a year ago or something like that, and it's been one of the better decisions that I've made. So
very nice. Well, I'm going to actually grab the next story here. There's a $4 app called Power Nap that aims to update all of your PC games while you're sleeping. Basically, it goes through, kicks off the launchers, lets them do their updates, and then shuts them down before you wake up. Given I have an extra 16 gigs of RAM on my laptop just to be able to keep all the launchers running in the background for all of my various PC platform or PC games, so they update when I want to play them. This sounds really, really interesting to me, because $4 for this little utility is a hell of a lot cheaper than an extra 16 gigs of RAM, I can tell you.
Yeah, the feature I want it to watch whenever I'm not playing a game on the platform and kill the damn launcher. Like if it's like, oh, I played something on Uplay, but I haven't played anything on Uplay for like an hour. All right, shut it down. I don't need that thing in my tray.
Yeah.
I'm
Play
honestly,
Night actually does that.
Yeah, I was going to say Play Night does that, but at the same time, my thing is kind of like, how are people not able to manually do some of these things? Where is it that much of a burden?
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, why do they want the launcher running all the time? Is it data mining me? Is it like collecting metrics? Like what else is he playing from our competitors? What's going? Because these things are aware of every executable on your box, right? So it's
Sure.
I'm sure that there's some financial incentive for them to have that launcher running all the time, not just my convenience.
I know with BattleNet at least, we wanted it always running because we would trickle the data for the next patch to you sometimes a month ahead of the patch release, because we would have like certain assets that were already done, and we knew we could deliver those safely, and we could do it at a very low bandwidth, which saved us money because we didn't have everybody trying to update at the exact same time, hammering the servers. We could trickle it out over time.
Yeah. What about using, like, you have a million client machines that are running idle, right? What about using them to actually distribute the patch peer to peer? Like
we did that as well. Yeah. People got grumpy about it, but it's the default in the BattleNet launcher. I mean, cripes, even Microsoft does it with Windows updates these days.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I can see the appeal, Hunter, because there are so many launchers on PC. This looks to support Origin, Ubisoft, Steam, BattleNet, Epix, and GOG Galaxy. But on top of those 6, I have a Rockstar launcher, I have a Bethesda launcher, I have an Arc launcher for Star Wars Online, I have a
Star Trek Online, but yeah.
Sorry, yes, thank you. The wargaming.net has one for World of Tanks. And there's a couple more that I'm forgetting. Like it's ridiculous.
But some of those launchers you don't need though. Like, I mean, the Arc launcher is not needed because you can get it on Steam, right? Like you can play that on Steam, and then like
but the launcher's still there, even if you run the Steam version, isn't it?
Not the Arc launcher. Now there's the game launches its own like login thing that you have to click on for the login of the game itself.
Right. Well, look at Eve.
The Arc launcher is different. Eve has its own little launcher thing too, because it's just like, but it's not. I wouldn't call it a launcher. You're trying to play an MMO, so it launches the login for the MMO.
But it's also the updater for the MMO, and it's I'm playing Elder Scrolls, right? And whenever I load that, Steam loads the launcher on my machine, and then I start the launcher, and then it downloads the game.
But it's not starting the Bethesda launcher. It's just starting the game's launcher itself, like its own independent launcher.
Well, but it's the same launcher that you get if you download it from ElderScrollsOnline.com. Is my point.
Right,
it's the exact same launcher.
But there's a difference between the Star Trek one and the Arc launcher. There is an actual Arc launcher that's different. That's what I'm trying to get at.
You're nitpicking one example that's different, but the rest of them are exactly what I described, which is you get the same launcher whether you get it from Steam or somewhere else. So I mean,
it's like, hey man, I heard you like launchers, so I put a launcher in your launcher. I mean, like, so you can launch your launcher.
I guess yes, but like we're talking about like a singular game with its own updater because it's an MMO versus a launcher that launches a multitude of games. That's the difference that I'm trying to get at.
Okay, so let's talk about Ubisoft, because whenever I buy an Ubisoft game on any platform, it installs the Uplay launcher, which then launches the game.
Yep.
Right, that would be a different example than what I was trying to get at, and I agree with you. That's a problem.
Yeah,
but maybe it's not, because like, I mean, if you're buying, like it's the same thing with Origin. Like now that EA is back on Steam, right? They put a little micro thing that you have to install. So it's like it's all tying back to their services because you're playing their game with their services. So you need to have their services on your machine anyway. The point I was trying to make though with this other stuff is it's different because it's a singular game that's an MMO. All MMOs have always had this thing, unless you're Blizzard with BattleNet.
Okay, so here's an idea, and we're gonna get rich selling this because it's so terrible that it must be true. Is what if all the movie studios, instead of selling their pay-per-view streaming service through Amazon or Netflix or whatever, they all start their own in-house thing, like CBS or Disney streaming or whatever, right? So then each individual movie studio gets their own service, but then they have like the Sony Pictures launcher that has to be installed on your TV. And then if you watch a movie, it'll hang on to it, and then it'll peer-to-peer stream it to your neighbors. And then they can save all that bandwidth by utilizing your television to watch.
How did we get here? I'm confused.
I was just thinking, like, well, video games, all the publishers, instead of wanting to go through Steam, decided, hey, we're going to break out, and Ubisoft's going to have the Uplay launcher, and EA is going to make the Origin launcher, and we're all just going to have a bunch of individual launchers instead of one unified store for reasons, right? So it's like, well, why shouldn't that apply in this very similar situation that we're seeing with the movie industry, where they too all want their individual streaming service instead of a centralized thing? And then I just thought, well, wouldn't it be even super stupid if they utilized the customer's bandwidth to distribute the movies?
Oh, okay. That's a weird flex, but all right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't
so you have to upgrade your
Well,
you have to upgrade your TV because it doesn't have enough RAM to hold all these launchers. Limes. What?
Oh my god. Okay.
Dear. Well, so I think details aside, I think there is a value in this app.
Sure.
For $4.
I can understand that. Sure.
But I do think, this is a problem for the PC industry right now that, there are so many different launchers, different storefronts. And as a gamer, I just want to play the game. Like, I don't have any particular loyalty to any of these. Even Steam, I know some people are diehard, it must be on the Steam store folks, and more power to them. But like I say, I have an extra 16 gigs of RAM on my laptop because I keep all these launchers open, and I have a 12-core CPU that is always doing stuff because these things are always sucking down resources in the background. So this sounds really appealing.
I mean, like I keep all my launchers open all the time anyway, and I don't see. And again, that's just because if I'm playing on this PC, like I just have everything open running in the background. It doesn't affect any of my performance or resources.
So GOG Galaxy has that deal where you can link your Steam account, you link your EA account and everything, and then it'll tell you what you own on those platforms and what's installed. But if you go to launch a game on Steam from there, it still has to launch Steam to then launch the game, right?
Yep.
So wouldn't it be cool if there was something like Play Night that actually could install and launch and do all the Steam things in the background without actually having to launch the whole full-on Steam client? Because Steam made like that Steam command thing that can like connect to their service as you, right? You log into it once, it remembers who you are. It's like whenever I update my Arc server, I don't have to load up Steam to do it. I just run the Steam command thing and tell it, like, go grab that update. Here's my username. And right. So wouldn't it be a nice thing if a third-party developer could actually write a unified front end that was all of these different launchers, but only was a single executable?
The only problem that you're running into right there is you listed Steam, which is the outlier in this. Not these other companies don't do what Steam does in this regard. So like Steam's
yes, but it would be nice if
it would, and I agree with you. It would be nice if, but here's the nice thing about Play Night is like it'll launch games and then close launchers for you in the back end. But to that end, like you also have to remember, like I said earlier, that a lot of these different platforms have their own services that need to run in order to be able to connect to play these games. So like if I want to play Battlefront 2, I've got to be able to talk to EA's like really crappy servers. If I want to play, what was it? Hypercharged Unbox, like what we did the other night. I gotta be on Steam to do that, to use Steam's backend. It's not just about getting the files, but it's about their backend services that you have to connect to through their ecosystem to do that. Now, why can't I just connect to their backend outside of the game? I don't know. but I think it would probably have to do something with the developer building it into their game themselves specifically, and blah blah blah, yada yada yada.
Yeah, well, if it's looking for an API, the game's going to make a call, right? Like to Steam command, hey, validate my stuff, and then it expects that, you know, if you look in the folder, there's a Steam API file, right? And that's what the game talks to. And for if you have an illicit copy of a Steam game, it's because somebody just replaced that file. And then
so
it worked,
then you're starting to run into other problems of now, like if a game is offered on multiple storefronts, then they have to configure like each and every different version with a different, like it gets messier and messier and messier.
Yeah. So what about this? If I buy the game, why can't I just take it to a different storefront? Right? Like, hey, I bought it on Epic, but then it comes to Steam a year later. So can I just transfer my Epic thing into Steam?
That's a terrible argument.
Well, interestingly, the movie industry did that with what was originally called Key Chest. It's now Movies Unlimited. You go and register, you know, with them. You link all of your store accounts from Google, Microsoft, iTunes, Amazon, etc. And any movie you've purchased on any of those platforms is then automatically available on all the others. So there is precedent for that happening sort of organically in the world. It's just not in the game industry, because I feel like the players in the game industry are all about themselves and getting as much money as they can for themselves, not what's in our best interest as consumers.
Yeah. Well, and again, Steam is the outlier, because Steam doesn't care if you go buy a game key from somewhere else and then redeem it on Steam. They never got their 30% of that sale, but they'll still deliver the game to you, right?
Yeah.
So that's cool. So because Steam doesn't seem to give a shit about that, it's like, well, great. Let me buy it on GOG or wherever the hell I get it, because it was cheaper there. But then whenever it is available on Steam, just let me bring that code over and I could launch it either place. Because why does Steam care? Steam wants me in Steam as much as possible, and that would achieve that.
I think you're forgetting about the other factor too, which is like, what about the developer themselves?
Well, the developer isn't going to sell me a second copy just because it's on another platform. So I already bought it once. The developer got their piece of me, right?
Well, I mean, I would love to see it. I think that there's ways that there are examples. GOG did GOG Connect, which was basically they would go into your Steam account, and if you had certain games that they had worked out an agreement with the developer of, they would give you a free copy on GOG. So there is some of that happening. It's just not the norm, unfortunately.
And the incentive is, because GOG is not the top dog in there, then they want people to have incentive to have the GOG launcher open as much as possible, so that the GOG launcher can offer me to purchase other things through that launcher.
Yep.
So, you know, the more I interact with the launcher, the better the odds are that I'm going to actually use it to purchase something. So, which I think is Steam's incentive for accepting third-party keys and stuff like that, yet still spending the money to deliver you the product.
Steam keys are interesting. I mean, they weren't originally supposed to be a way to sell games somewhere else, right?
Right.
Well, that's not completely true. They were a way for you to go to retail and bring your game to retail. Because remember, Steam was the beginning of digital distribution. So when it started, everybody was going and buying a box, and they had to have some way to get you from the box to Steam. And so the keys were that method originally. More recently, what's crazy to me is Steam will limit the number of keys that a developer can issue for a particular title.
Right. And that's due to the horrors of the bundles scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and it's and it's not a high limit. You can ask for an exception, but it literally takes very little effort for Steam to destroy the PC market, secondary market or gray market, by just basically making keys cost $1. if they charged $1 for the developer to issue the keys,
Right.
then all of a sudden all this other shenanigans go away because there's a huge disincentive for the developers to use keys.
Yeah. Now I know a personal horror story of somebody who made a game, and then their publisher decided, hey, I'm going to print up like 1 million Steam keys and then sell those on the gray market without the developer's consent, and basically just buried him because like he couldn't sell a legit copy of his game because you could go gray market, and nobody got any money out of that other than the publisher. So the publisher just kind of like sidestepped him using the exploit of Steam keys. And it was just like really dirty.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I think there is, the industry, PC industry is rife for some kind of reform, however we get there. But, I don't know what that ultimately looks like.
Yeah, well, I was kind of surprised that like Humble Bundle, right? The way that Humble Bundle used to work is you would sign in to Humble Bundle and then sign into Steam, and Humble Bundle would just inject the game into your Steam account, which meant that you never got exposed a key.
Yep.
So it's not like I can buy it on Humble Bundle and then give the key to somebody else, right?
Right.
Or I can't go like, hey, here's this game and it's hella cheap this week, so I'm going to buy like a bunch of them and then warehouse the keys and wait for the price to come up and then scalp it back out, still at a discount.
That's strange, right? Because on Humble Bundle I can still see all my keys. That's weird.
Well, yeah, but they used to have the feature where you didn't have to click a thing that would then open the Steam page and paste the key in, because there was a middle phase there that was really inconvenient where it was like, here's your keys, so now you got to copy paste them and then open up Steam and go do this manually, and that really sucked. So the compromise was for them to make a thing that actually launched Steam and stuck the key in, but you still have to go through the clicks to do it by hand. But it copies the key for you at least. But it used to, originally it was like none of that. It was invisible. It was like, oh, you bought this game and then you open Steam and there it is. So
yeah, it's called keyless redemption, and they still do it for BattleNet and Ubisoft, I think, on Humble, but not for Steam or Epic, which is...
I don't understand what changed in the ego, because I would have thought that was better.
What changed is Humble started their own store. And Valve cut them off when that happened, I think, because Valve said, well, you're no longer just this specialty thing where you're doing these crazy bundles. You're now a direct competitor, so we're not going to make that easy for you.
Right. So how do they get the keys that they then sell? Because
from the developers.
So the developer has to go and print out a spreadsheet of keys and then take that spreadsheet to Humble and say, hey, like here's 5,000 keys or whatever that you can sell. Right. So like what you were saying, if Steam said, hey, guess what? Those cost 25 cents a key to issue, so at that point, now you have issued 20,000 keys that cost you 5,000 real dollars to do. So, that disincentivizes just making a complete shitload of keys. And you know what? The less keys that are laying around on spreadsheets, the less like unfortunate things can happen if those spreadsheets leak out somewhere.
Yeah,
because that has happened too. Like, hey, I found this developer's list of 10,000 keys. Here, it's a party.
Yeah, well, and it's easy to think that sooner or later Valve is going to decide that they've had enough. Right. And there's this whole industry of people reselling Steam keys that Valve, like you said, Valve is still on the hook to deliver the content for that. They still have to ship the bits to your computer. And that does cost money, contrary to some beliefs. Like, now in the grand scheme of things, how much does that cost Valve? Not much, because they do so much volume. Yeah. But it's still a cost. There is still a delivery cost. And if you imagine over the lifetime of a game, I might install it 5 or 6 times,
Yeah. And I am shocked that Steam has not yet leveraged peer-to-peer in their client.
Yeah. Yeah. So ultimately, I feel like, are going to see something happen in the industry. Valve has so much money that they're kind of the sleeping giant because they're not incentivized to micro optimize these problems. But if they decide they've had enough, like, a huge swath of the industry goes away overnight. A dozen, reseller sites will go out of business. Like, it would be a massive change. And given the competition Steam is facing from Epic and others, like, that might conceivably happen. So we shall see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that actually shakes out or not. It's like, at what point does that happen? And I think at the point that Gabe retires, or like his health forces him to retire, or whatever, it's a matter of time, because everybody eventually goes away. Yeah. So at the point that Gabe departs, does the company have a radical personality shift or not? Because if it comes under ownership of something else, then those people are going to be like, oh, all this nonsense stops today. We're going to squeeze every nickel out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. I would not be shocked to see that.
Yeah.
All right, Hunter, any one or two last news stories? I know we're a little bit over our time here.
No, I think that'll be good for us for today. There's quite a bit of stuff out there. I mean, another like some minor noteworthy thing is Tencent did purchase a minor stake in Bohemia Interactive, which is the developers of Arma. So they've got their little paws in yet another studio.
Well, so I assume that means in Arma now we're going to be fighting the Russians exclusively.
Yeah, or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, and speaking of people purchasing people, so Microsoft and the ZeniMax deal, my understanding, based on like some headlines that I read but didn't read the story attached to it because I'm that guy, is that the EU is blocking the ZeniMax acquisition still for some reason, because they're debating whether it's like legal for reasons. I'm just surprised. Like, I don't know why they care, but sure.
I mean, blocking it how? Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, they have to say, like, yeah, we're going to allow this merger to happen. It's like you can't do that without
the EU can say that.
Yeah, our government does that too. Like, if one telephone company wants to buy another one, then it has to be approved by the government before it's allowed.
Is ZeniMax an EU company?
Well, they have EU subsidiaries for tax reasons, so that's where it gets weird. There's probably ways around it. Like, if the EU decided they didn't want to allow it, Microsoft has enough money and clout, they could probably work around it. But they might have to change the marketing of it a little bit. Ultimately,
Europe has a boner for just suing Microsoft anyway. It's nuisance money to Microsoft at this point. It's just like, well, it'll cost more to get rid of these people than to just buy them out. So, all right, whatever. Here's your money.
Yeah, and ultimately the EU makes a decision on March 5th, so we'll know pretty soon what's what as far as the EU goes.
Well, we're still running a giveaway over on our Discord server. If we can get up to 100 participants over in our Discord server, we'll start running a $25 Amazon gift card giveaway. There's more details.
We're giving away $100 if we get to 100 members. It's awesome.
And if we get to 1,000, I'm giving away one Dogecoin.
No.
There's more details over on our Discord server. So if you actually go to discord.otherworlds.gg, you will get to our Discord server. Be sure to click on the little controller emoji to get yourself a member role, and welcome to the party. So we look forward to seeing you guys over there to continue the conversation, and we'll see you in next week's episode. This has been episode number 10.
Woohoo!